Hey everybody, this is Karen from Blue Rooster Farm, and today we are in the kitchen getting ready to make chocolate chip cookies. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, another chocolate chip cookie recipe. I get it, there's a lot out there, but you're going to have to try this one. This one is one of the best chocolate chip cookie recipes that I have ever made, and I have made it now for over 20 years. This recipe was shared to me by my friend Krista in Springfield. And when we were younger, it was before we were married, we both were teaching together, and we loved to cook. That was one thing that we really had a shared hobby about, was cooking. And she was trying to find the perfect cookie recipe, and she developed this recipe. Now, throughout the years, I have made some changes to better fit what my family needs and likes, but it's her basic recipe with a few changes that I have made. So thank you, Krista, for giving me this recipe. There's lots of people that compliment it all the time. Everybody asks for this recipe when they taste these cookies. So give this one a try. Come back to my kitchen and I'll show you how it's done. Okay, we are making homemade chocolate chip cookies. Now, if you like a moist cookie or if you like a crunchy cookie, these cookies will make either one. We tend to like one that's a little crispy on the outside but nice and moist inside. And so it depends on how long you bake them to get what texture you like. So here's how you make them. I'm going to be using my mixer here, and I'm going to turn you down here so that you can see a little better. All right, I think this is good right here. I think you can see just great right there. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use the paddle. Now, I don't know if any of you sew out there, but if you get tired of having your bowl with your accessories gathering dust on the counter, these are really easy to make. I made this one. You can just cut fabric in a circle, 2 circles, make them about 2 or 3 inches than the diameter 2 or 3 inches wider. Put the 2 fabrics together, sew together, turn it inside out, put your elastic on it, and you've got a great cover. Really easy to do. So just a little tip for those of you who also like to sew. I really like to keep mine on mine. It does keep all that dust out and anything that we've got going in the kitchen, since we're always in the kitchen. All right, so we're going to attach the regular paddle. There we go. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cream the butter, which is what you usually do with most cookie recipes. And this recipe calls for room temperature butter. Now, if you melt your butter, it's not going to be at the end of the world, but it's going to change the texture of your cookies. Because melted butter performs a little differently and absorbs the flour a little differently, it will change the texture. I like mine just warm enough to be able to whip it. And so that's how I do mine. It calls for 1 stick of butter, for half a cup of shortening. And if you've watched my other videos, you might have noticed that I use lard. So I'm going to put half a cup of lard in there. And we render our own lard, and I just make it and then I freeze it and then keep a jar in the fridge. I brought half a cup to room temperature, so that is what I have in there. Again, make sure your shortening and your butter are not melted, but soft enough to blend and whip easy. So we're going to cream that up. Okay. And after that's creamed, we are going to put our white sugar and brown sugar in here, both of our sugars. So we are going to start off with 1 cup of brown sugar. And I have a half a cup measuring cup here, so I'll do 2 of these. And with brown sugar, we always pack it. There's 1 cup altogether, 2 half cups, 1 cup. And I'm going to mix that brown sugar in. Okay. And then we're going to add a cup of white sugar. And as we do, I'm going to just keep this going and mix it and blend it in as I'm adding it. Okay, that's nicely incorporated. Now to this, we are going to add our eggs. And I like to crack them in a dish. Usually we have brown eggs from a farm, but these are from the store. But this keeps the shells from getting in. I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to add it and then crack the other one and add it too. Nicely whipped up. We're going to add to that our vanilla and our almond. And whether you use real vanilla or artificial vanilla, it doesn't make a difference to me. I don't think anybody could tell a difference in a baked cookie. And I added a tablespoon. I like to have the flavor of vanilla. And this is one thing that I added to the recipe that hadn't been in the original, and that is almond flavoring. I add about a teaspoon to my cookie dough. So let's mix those flavorings in. Okay, so at this point you have a nice fluffy dough, and you'll still see some sugar crystals, but there won't be as many as there were originally because we've added that flavoring, and that helps break down some of those crystals. Now we are ready to start adding our dry ingredients. Here is where I changed up the recipe. Besides the almond, in the original recipe, it was, I believe, a half a cup of oat flour. I like oatmeal cookies, and these you could add the oat flour without really making a whole lot of difference. Just, I feel it makes it a little bit more chewy, a little bit more heartier. So instead of a half a cup, which her original recipe called for, I'm adding a full cup. And you can either buy oat flour or you can make your own, and I make my own. I just take my oats, put them in a food processor or a blender. We have the Ninja, and just whir them up until they're nice flour consistency. And that's what we get. Okay, so I'm going to add a cup, and this is a half a cup, so we have a half a cup. And we have a cup. Now, in order to get a cup of oat flour, you're going to have to mix more than 1 cup of oats because it will reduce the amount. So I usually make a bunch at once, and I have an actual canister that I keep my oat flour in because we do use it a lot for breads, cakes, and cookies. But if you only want to make enough for this recipe, you will have to add more than 1 cup of oats, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and mix these in and let them start working into the dough. Okay. Now we are going to add our dry ingredients like our flour and our baking powder, soda, and salt. So let's see, we need 1 teaspoon of baking powder. And you want to make sure your baking powder is good. If it's been sitting in a jar or something for a long time, it may not be fresh, so you may want to get new baking powder every once in a while if you don't use it very often. Same with baking soda. And they're used to help poof the cookie, and then after the cookie poofs, it comes back down and makes a nice texture to the cookie. Okay, a half a teaspoon of baking soda. And I've just used my teaspoon, but I've got it, so it's a half. And again, I push out the lumps when it's in the spoon. That way no one has to bite into a big lump of baking soda. And we're going to add a half a teaspoon of salt. And I use kosher salt, which is a larger, coarser grain. And so I usually heap it a little bit. Okay, half it. That was half a teaspoon of salt. Okay. All right. And then here is the ingredient that I've also changed. Besides the oatmeal, besides the almond, I add some cornstarch. And I've learned adding cornstarch to some of my recipes either helps with the moistness of it and just the texture, but it does make a difference. And I add a heaping tablespoon, okay? Sprinkle that all around in there. You can leave it out if you don't have it, but I believe it does make a difference in the cookie, the texture of the cookie. And the last dry ingredient is our flour. Now I have 2.5 cups of flour on my recipe. Depending on the flour, remember flour can absorb moisture, and 2.5 cups may be perfect. Sometimes I go a little less if I think my dough is getting kind of thick. But we're going to go ahead and do 2.5, just like the recipe, and we'll see whether they turn out to be a good consistency. And if you want to sift your flour, you may. I don't. Okay, there's 1 cup. There's 2 cups. And here's a half. All right, so we are now ready to mix this up, and we're going to turn it on low to get it started so we don't have a big poof. Okay, so we got that blended together. All the flour is incorporated. Scrape down the sides a little bit. Now to add our chocolate chips and our nuts. So we are going to add 2 cups of chocolate chips. I am adding milk chocolate chips, semi-sweet, and some dark chocolate. So several different kinds, but any of those 3 you can add in any combination or all by itself, whichever you like. If you need, if you're trying to watch your sugar and you want cookies, but you want to reduce your sugar, you can even add sugar-free chocolate chips. Okay, I'm going to give this just a little stir. Then we're going to add a cup of nuts, and I'm using English walnuts. Almonds or pecans would also be delicious. Okay, I'm getting a little aggressive with my mixer, aren't I? Okay, so I am noticing my dough is a little thicker than I usually have it, but it should be fine. We will see. If it comes out where it's the textures or the size of the cookie or the shape of the cookie isn't as good, I will let you know so you can add maybe a 1/4 cup less flour, but we're going to try it and see. Because usually when I make it, I'm not really paying that close of attention to my ingredients. I've got it pretty well memorized. All right. Whoops. Now, another thing that I do when I make cookies that's important is I make sure I have a good sheet pan, and I really like the ones that are double layer with the air in between. They really keep it from burning, and I really like that. So I'm going to be using that kind of cookie sheet. If you don't have one and you use a dark cookie sheet, watch them carefully because dark has a tendency to burn a little quicker. Also, if you're using just a thin metal cookie sheet, you'll want to watch them. My oven does have a tendency not to get quite as hot as some, and it's a convection gas oven. So I'm used to cooking with it, and I know exactly how long my cookies take, but your oven's going to be different, so you'll have to watch. Okay, so I'm going to get these on a cookie sheet, and then we'll put them in the oven. Okay, now as you see, I've already put one pan in the oven, and I've made little mounds, and I've separated them. They won't spread like a lot of thin cookies will, so we're not going to have to worry about them touching, but they will flatten, and then they'll puff up a little bit, and then when you take them out, they're going to fall and leave little crinkles. So we're going to cook the ones that are in the thing. I'll tell you how long they took in my oven. Again, a 350-degree oven, my convection oven. You type in 350 and it drops down to 325. But cook until on the bottom level of your oven until they're just about puffy, but they look raw still. And then move them to the top rack and then put the second rack in. Okay, I'll be back in a little bit. All right, I'm letting you look right here. This is just about the stage that we are going to flip them, but you can see that one right there still has a little bit unmelted in the middle. There's a couple in the back that are ready to go, but we're going to wait till they're all ready to go to the top rack, just about there. These are ready to go to the next rack, the next one up. You can see they're all puffed. Okay, I've moved them to the top rack. Bottom rack is a new sheet of cookies. Okay, I have just taken these out of the oven, And right now they're puffed. Now you can help them by dropping the pan on your counter, or they'll naturally puff, but I'll go ahead and help them. And they start to deflate. Now this is if you want an ooey gooey cookie. If you want it more crispy, leave it in longer. All right, so they are collapsing and they are looking really good. I'm going to let them cool just a little bit, and then we're going to cut into one or break it open and just see how delicious it is. Okay, I'll pull out the other ones in just a minute and show you what we've got. Here is my second tray, and I cooked them just a little bit more to give them a little more crispiness, just to change the texture just a little bit. I cooked these cookies about 12 minutes on the bottom shelf and almost 5 minutes on the top shelf. I did get them a little more, not brown, but a little more crispy around the edges. If I can show you that without, they're too hot to pick up. So they're a little bit more cooked than I did the last batch, because I wanted to show you the different textures that you might get. We've flattened them by dropping them when they came out. And now I'm going to let them cool a little bit. But we'll see how they differ in that first batch. Again, the first batch, I think it was about 10 minutes or 12 minutes on the bottom and just a couple minutes on the top. And this one was 5 minutes on the top. Different ovens are different, so don't just base it on my temperature. My oven doesn't get as hot, and I'm using an insulated sheet. Okay, all the cookies are out of the oven, and I'm going to show you the one sheet that I cooked a little longer to show you that you can do them a crispier cookie. Try this one right here. So this one, take my face out of it maybe, there we go. It is a little browner around the edges. Okay. And it's still warm, so it's going to be a little tender inside, but it's not quite. And then when it cools, it'll be a little crispier. You can see on the edge that it's a crispier cookie. Okay. Still good for those of you that like crispy. Then the ones that we baked at a shorter amount of time. Let me take one out, and these have cooled down more. Okay. Break it. Even though it's cooled, it's very soft, very ooey, very gooey. It still is a firm enough cookie. It's not falling apart or anything, but a very tender, moist inside. Just very soft, very gooey. So there you have the very best chocolate chip cookies. One thing that I wanted to share with you is that if you wanted to change things up even more, I've made this recipe without the chocolate chips and added craisins and white chips, and that was really good. You could also do raisins and nuts, and then cinnamon, added some cinnamon to the dough, and that makes a really good raisin cinnamon cookie. But there's lots of stuff you can do. You can add different, candy bar chunks. You can add, I'm trying to think some add-ins that you would add, different flavored chips, Heath bar, but you can use that basic dough and add different things to it to make another type of cookie. But it's a great basic dough. And what we do is we leave a couple out because it's just my husband and I, and then we will I will freeze the rest, and then we can take them out and eat them one at a time. Or when we have company, we can pull them out. And they're great reheated. If you like them warm, they're great. Just stick one on a plate and stick it in the microwave and warm it up a little bit. Taste it fresh out of the oven. Thanks a lot for watching today. If you like what you see, please like and share and subscribe to my channel. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe. Just push that subscribe button, and that just helps you find. You can set notifications when I release new videos, but it just allows you to kind of bookmark my video. It doesn't cost you anything, but it helps me immensely. So I would really appreciate that. Just starting off a channel, trying to see how many people are interested in my recipes. I was originally going to do this, just put the videos in and have it private for just my family, because I wanted to pass on our family recipes. But then somebody encouraged me to go ahead and make it so the public can see it. And so I thought, well, if I go to that trouble, I will see what kind of audience I can get. So I really appreciate you supporting me in this. If you want to see other recipes, check out my site, Blue Rooster Farm, and you can find more videos. I've been producing a couple a week right now as I try to build up my channel, but I hope to always at least put one out a week. You will find this recipe at the very end of this video so that you can do a screenshot, or you can freeze it and you can write it down. But I really appreciate you sticking with this video, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great week. Bye-bye.